Thank you for tuning in and welcome back, team. In today's episode, we'll be talking about low appraised values. When you're out there home shopping and maybe you're in the closing process right now, a lot of questions are probably running through your mind. What happens if you can't find a house before your lease ends? What happens if you can't find a place that you like? What happens if you fall in love with a house and you get bad news during the home inspection or get beat out by a bidding war? These are very common questions that are probably running through your mind right now. One of the questions that don't always come up but absolutely should is what happens if a low appraised value comes in less than what you need it to be. My name is Andrew Finney, your real estate geek. If you need help finding a top agent where you live, or if you simply want to drop me a line and say hello, my contact info is below. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel now and like this video. For reference, I upload 6 days a week, so be sure to tap the bell icon and get notified of the very next video. Thank you. Okay, team, so let's go ahead and talk about this one. First of all, why do you even need a home appraisal, right? What is it and why do you need it? Well, home appraised value is an absolute must if you're getting financing on your new home. It's a way that the bank appraises the property to see if the home's value and the offer price are the same, and if they are, great, there's no problem there. So an appraiser is actually going to go out and do a valuation of the property to ensure that the bank can lend the amount of money for the home. So let's say that you're offering on a $500,000 home. Let's say that the appraiser goes out and they say the home's worth $480,000. It's a $20,000 difference. What happens next, right? So it's really important to know what we could do. But before we get into that, let's go into 4 common reasons why an appraisal could come in less than the contract price. The first thing is actually a bidding war. Sometimes in hyper-competitive housing markets, people go into multiple bid situations, and in the motion of it, you're doing whatever it takes to win the bid. Sometimes people waive out appraisal contingencies. Sometimes people guarantee a certain amount beyond a possible low appraised value. Sometimes people offer to pay a lot of seller closing fees. I mean, it's nuts what some of people are willing to do. Strong sellers market. And it's okay. I mean, if you're in the situation and those are some of the terms you agreed to, hey, do what you got to do, but be aware that whenever it comes to appraised value, there's important things that you should be considering because you can't get more home loan than the appraised value. Just be aware of that. The second reason that sometimes appraisals come in low are actually just bad timing. Seasonal peaks can be a culprit of this. For example, early spring is probably the most common time for low appraisals in some of the colder states, New England, New York, because whenever the weather gets lousy, then people don't buy homes as often. And if they're not buying homes as often, you could have history of possible lower appraised values than maybe in the spring season whenever it jumps up. That's one example that's very specific to a geographic region. It applies all across the United States. It just depends on what marketplaces you're in. You might want to have that conversation with your trusted real estate advisor before you start making offers on a home to better understand what the market's like, whether it's likely to appraise or not. The third thing, and I hate to say it, but it's true, is sometimes you just get a bad apple. Sometimes you get a bad appraiser. And sometimes they might just be new to the market, and sometimes it happens. Maybe the appraiser just isn't that familiar with the area, unfortunately, or they weren't looking at all the comparables, or it could be an appraiser that's new, an appraiser that's from out of town, and they may have made some oversights when it came up to their valuation or their opinion of the value of the property, and it might not make any sense. But people make mistakes, so things happen, and that's why you have a couple of fallback options, and we'll go into 3 of the options here in this video in a couple of moments. But just to let you know, they're with a VA loan. It's called a Tidewater process if you have to do a reconsideration of the value. For other loans, FHA and conventional USDA, it's simply just called that, reconsideration of value. Now, the 4th common reason is there's no comparable sales history to support the price. What happens if you buy like in a new home community and the new home community is been sold out for 2 or 3 years, but nobody has sold their home because they just bought them. But now here we're coming into year 5, year 6, year 7, where you might start seeing people put homes on the market. If there's nothing like it around that area that's comparable to that home, it might make it difficult to hit price of the home that they're looking to get. It might absolutely be worth that amount of money, but if there's no comparable activity to support it, sometimes it's a little bit difficult. So it's just something to think about, because if that's the scenario, then normally an appraiser will be a little bit more conservative and assigning the value on that property. So the next thing is, what happens if the appraisal is lower than the purchase price? What options do you have, right? The first one is a clear cut, and as always, the best thing to happen if it can happen. And that first thing is asking the seller to do a price reduction, asking the seller to reduce to the appraised value. Hopefully they're willing to do that if the sellers are motivated, if the sellers are people that believe in just doing the right right thing and the appraisal makes sense, meaning that it wasn't like stupid low. But if it was one of those situations where maybe it's a difference of $2,000, $5,000 to $10,000, if we're talking about a $500,000 house and we're talking about a reduction of $10,000, $20,000, then the seller might be open to doing that if that's the case, if that's their appraised value, especially if they knew before they went on the market, maybe they were going on slightly high just to kind of test the market and see where it was at. And as long as you didn't waive your appraisal contingency, then you'll be able to have this renegotiation with you. So that's important what I just said, and please pay attention to that. As long as you did not waive an appraisal contingency, you'll have that right to ask for a renegotiation. So the second thing is you can obviously come out of pocket. So going back to that $500,000 home example, if it comes in at $480,000, paying out of pocket means that you're paying an additional $20,000 up to the contract price of that home above the appraised value. Now, it's important to note that that money will be on top of your down payment, and it'll also be on top of your buyer closing costs, along with any of the other terms that you and the seller have agreed to in the contract. So it's very important to understand what you're doing whenever you're paying above that. Now, some common reasons that I see why people would be willing to do this goes back to the reason why you're buying the home. How long are you going to live there? What's your intent for that home? If your intent is to live there 10, 15, 20 years, then sometimes, yeah, people are willing to pay out of pocket above a possible low appraised value for the simple fact that they're getting the home that they want. And if that's your case, cool. Just be willing to do whatever it takes to keep your contract alive if that's the case, and if it's the right home for you and you have a long-term vision for that property. Now, in other cases, I see it where sometimes the appraisals come in low, or maybe the buyers just don't have that kind of money to come up. So then what happens in that situation? Well, there's a couple more options that you could explore. One is reconfiguring your financing. Unless you're already on a down payment assistance program or a home as possible program because you don't have a lot of money in the bank, then you might be able to go back to the lender, especially if you were planning on doing like a 10% or 15%, 20% down payment, what have you, and just say, hey, I'm willing to put a lesser amount of money down so I can go ahead and use that money to compensate for this appraised value on this property. So it's one thing to consider. Now, if you are on down payment assistance or home as possible programs, that may not be the situation that you're going to be able to work with. Now, it is important to note that with like FHA and VA loans, you can get what's called gifted funds from family and friends if they're able to assist you with purchasing your property. Talk to your lender about that. Talk to your trusted local loan officer about how best to do that and what your options are. Now, the fourth thing, and this is probably the most common thing I see in real estate practice, if, going back to that $500,000 example, if that home appraises for $480,000, but everybody had agreed to $500,000, what I will normally see families doing is what I call splitting hairs. In other words, the seller will agree to take the price down $10,000 and the buyer will agree to come up $10,000. So everybody's even Stevens at $490,000. Everybody's still happy with moving forward together, and everybody feels like the right thing was done in that situation. So that's something for you to think about and something for you to consider about how important a home appraisal is. Now, what I would like you to do is tell me what you're thinking about this episode and any of your experiences you've had with a low appraisal and how you overcame them. Share it with us in the comments section below. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pop up my contact information. If you want to drop me a line to say hello, or if you need help finding a top agent where you live, please let me know. I always love to hear from you. In between now and next time, I'm wishing you and yours a lifetime full of love, wealth, abundance, and happiness. Thank you for watching today, team, and see you again soon.